Scott Broome has had highs and lows in his life, but in his career, it's been successful right here at Roper Hospital. Now, he's the CEO of the hospital's new Berkeley County campus. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down with him one-on-one. Scott, it's so good to see you.
So good to see you. It's my pleasure.
I appreciate
it.
it. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Tell me, how are you?
I'm very well.
Yes.
Very well. Staying busy, but that's like most people. So.
Speaking of which, fill in the blanks for me. Lorraine Lutton being named president
Yes.
of CEO of Roper St. Francis's.
Yes, we're very, very excited about her coming. She clearly has a wealth of experience from the Baycare system in Tampa. Baycare is a larger system than we are. It's maybe 3.5 times our size, and she was the CEO of their flagship hospital. So she has obviously a very impressive resume and a very impressive background, and so we're so excited to have her come. She starts officially on November 14th, which is soon,
Right.
very soon. We're sorry to see David go. David has been a wonderful, if I could use the term, patriarch for our system in a lot of ways, and David obviously brought a career's worth of experience to Roper St. Francis, but I'm happy for him to transition to other things, but excited to see our new CEO come.
Let's talk about you. Scott Broome being named CEO of the Roper St. Francis Berkeley Hospital was.
That's true. Very excited about that. Earlier in my career at Roper St. Francis, I was the administrator for our Roper Berkeley site, which is effectively a hospital without beds. There's an ER and a surgery center and some other things there, but so it's a substantial facility. I enjoyed being in Berkeley County very much. Good people up there, and I think it's the biggest county by land mass in South Carolina, but without a hospital. So we're excited to bring healthcare, a hospital, to that growing area, and I'm personally excited to have the opportunity to support Roper St. Francis in that.
The South Carolina Supreme Court decision allows Roper St. Francis to build in Berkeley County is.
That's right. So it was an 8-year process from submission to getting the approval to build. We got approval to build in 2015, December 18th, I believe, of 2015. So it was a nice Christmas present to get that approval.
Exactly.
And now that we have it, we are full speed ahead with architectural and engineering work, and hope to open a medical office building in 2018, probably in the summer, and open the hospital in early 2019.
Yes, indeed. Speaking of which, ADR to design a new health village for Roper St. Francis Berkeley Hospital is.
Yes, so HDR is the architect. HDR is a large multinational firm, a great deal of experience in healthcare, but other things as well. In fact, they were part of the design team that designed the Arthur Avenel Bridge.
That's right.
And so we're excited to have their expertise. They have expertise in healthcare, but also in many other fields, and I've been very impressed with their work so far. They're a very forward-thinking firm.
I want you to walk with me down memory lane.
Sure.
You said this to the Bolson Court in 2011.
Okay.
Quote, I was a relatively young guy who had some administrative experience, but I really did not have any cancer experience. Tell me, who was Scott Broome as a service line director for oncology?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to move into the oncology role, to the service line director for cancer services, which means that I managed cancer services for our entire system anywhere we had cancer services. And so I moved into that role following my time at Roper Berkeley in 2007. And my background was in science, chemistry, and biology, and so I enjoy. And then I have a master's in public health and health administration. So for me, being closer to the scientific things and being closer to the clinical services was very gratifying, because not that I was treating patients, but I was working with clinicians every day,
right.
And so had a chance to be close to that. Learned a lot about hospital operations. Learned a lot about how to care for complex patients. Learned a lot about. Was fortunate enough to be able to be involved in building our outpatient cancer center, which is about an 80,000 foot building on the St. Francis Hospital campus. And so I was fortunate to be able to see that from start to finish, which I think has prepared me well for the construction project up at the Berkeley Hospital now. But really enjoyed the cancer work. People say that it must be tough to work in cancer because people are getting bad news and things of that nature, which is true. But I always tell our caregivers that it's both a privilege and responsibility, right? It's a privilege to be called upon to help a person when they're at their most vulnerable point. Yeah. And probably for all of us, getting a cancer diagnosis is probably one of the top five things on or one of the things on our top five list that we don't want to have happen to us.
Right.
Well, for the patients that come to us, that has happened to them, right? They've gotten that diagnosis.
Right.
And so it's a privilege to care for them, but it's also a responsibility. And it's one that our staff take very seriously, that our physicians take very seriously, and it's really been a privilege.
And Scott Broome turns 32 in September 27th.
Yes.
I know that you were actually training for one of the best marathons in the world, the Marine Corps Marathon.
Yes, in D.C., yes.
Tell me what happened thereafter.
So it was interesting. I was that would have been my first marathon. I had done a number of halves, and I had done a number of 10Ks, 5Ks, things of that nature. And that was to be my first marathon, and I completed the training program. In fact, was tapering 2 weeks before the race, and I think 2 weeks out I began to have some symptoms. And at that point I had been a cancer program administrator for a number of years, and sit in multidisciplinary tumor conferences with physicians, and one just by osmosis learns a few things, right? And so I began to have some symptoms, and didn't think much of it at first, but they progressed very quickly. And it was just this sense of fullness in my neck and head, and a really bizarre sensation, and and it progressed daily, particularly after runs or things like that, when my cardiac output was up, and I immediately kind of began to think, well, something is compressing my vasculature in my chest. This doesn't seem right, and this is not a sinus infection or something. Like something is not right. And so I remember on a Friday, I scheduled an appointment with my primary care physician, and I told him, I said, I want you to do a chest x-ray because I think I have a tumor compressing the vasculature in my chest. And he looked at me and he said, you're nuts. You're a young, healthy guy, and why do you think that? And he said, we'll do the x-ray, but then he listened to my heart and things of that nature, and noted a cardiac or noted a heart murmur, and which was being caused by the issues. And so of course that was on a Friday, and I couldn't get the x-rays until the Monday. Right. And all these things tend to happen on Friday, and then you have to wait through the weekend. Right. And so at some point during the weekend I just said, enough, this is progressing, and I went to the ER, and they did a chest CT and found the tumor, and it was 11 centimeters, probably a little bit bigger than a softball, and it was the official term is it was a primary germ cell tumor. Testicular cancers are germ cell tumors. Some ovarian cancers are germ cell tumors, but this one was primary to the chest, so it wasn't anywhere else. It was in the chest. And then, long story short, from there, so I didn't run the marathon. Right. I wasn't able to do that marathon. So I was in treatment within a couple of weeks. By the end of, so this was in September, started treatment very shortly thereafter. Was finished with treatment the week of Christmas of 2007. Right. And then didn't require any further treatment, was followed very closely for a period of years after that, and I've had no problems with that since. I was able to go on and run the Kiowa Marathon in
Right.
2008
Yes.
and complete that, and continue to do runs. I've done more halves than I have. I have some knee issues, right? Just arthritic
Right.
stuff and stuff from probably running too much, and so I don't do as many long runs. Do a lot of halves, do a lot of 10Ks, do some road biking, and in fact I've got a metric century is 100 kilometers, 62 miles, and I've done some of those, and I've got one coming up in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
So that's a little easier on the joints
Right.
than the running. Right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So, but doing well, and almost 10 years out now.
Wow.
Hard to believe.
It's hard to believe. It's like 2007 was like yesterday. See some people's minds.
It's good. It's good to have that in the rearview mirror.
Exactly.
Good to have that in the rearview mirror.
But I want to take it back for a few because I know that when you got that diagnosis, you were actually going to adopt, I guess, a child from
Good.
Ethiopia.
Yeah.
But you had to withdraw because of that particular diagnosis.
So you've done extensive research.
I have.
So we have 5 children.
Right.
And we had our first child biologically in 2005.
Right.
And she's now 11. But before we had her, we're already adoption minded. We're
Right.
already thinking about adoption. So ended up having the cancer, and when you have a cancer or a diagnosis like that in your history, that can limit your ability to adopt from some places, because the countries want to place these kids with
Right.
parents that have longevity and so on. So obviously put the adoption piece on hold. You're right. The week that I was diagnosed, that same week, almost to the day, we had put our dossier in the mail to adopt a child from Ethiopia.
Wow.
So still regret that didn't come to fruition, but we're people of faith, and we just look back on that and say, well, it wasn't in God's timing. And so we're fortunate enough to be able to adopt a little boy from South Carolina in 2009. And then a little girl again from South Carolina in 2011. And then we have adopted 2 boys from China as well. And most recently, the last boy to come into our home, his name was Luke, and we adopted him in 2015.
Wow.
So it's a busy house. It's a busy
I was
house.
going to ask, what's your secret to juggling all that?
Well, it's my wife.
Yes.
She does a wonderful job seeing after their needs, and but it is busy. It is busy.
You talk about faith. When my mother had her breast cancer diagnosis a couple of years ago, she relied on God.
Sure.
And I told her to, read the scriptures on healing.
Sure.
And I'm wondering, what was your secret to really dealing with that diagnosis?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I was certainly fortunate in the role that I was in as a cancer director to be surrounded by a number of cancer care professionals. And I knew my oncologist well enough to where I could pick up the cell phone and call him. And I recognize that most patients don't have that kind of access. We have navigators here that patients do have access to, and I leaned on those people pretty heavily. But as it relates to faith, I certainly believe that God and His providence equips people, for certain work,
Right.
and so through people working their vocations of medicine, whether it be medical oncology or nursing or radiation therapy. I didn't have radiation, but whatever the case may be, we had exactly what I needed here to get a good outcome, and I view that under the kind of umbrella of God's sovereignty and His providence. Has provided, people like medical professionals and things of that nature that are expert
Right.
at practicing their science and things like that. And so there are no guarantees, as you know, but I felt like I had very good care, and I was thankful for everyone that participated in the care process.
And your boss at the time, I believe, he told you, you have all the resources here, but you don't have to necessarily
He
come
did.
here
He did.
for,
He
treatment.
did. That's right. He, I think that was his way of saying, look, you're a young guy, you got a lot of life ahead of you, hopefully, and if you want to go to, MD Anderson or Sloan Kettering or,
Right.
some bigger center that specializes. It was also a rare cancer.
Right.
The statistics on people that get germ cell tumors that are primary outside of the typical places, testicular or ovarian, very, very uncommon. They happen, but very uncommon. So I think recognizing that, he wanted to, it was kind of him to kind of let me know that I was free to pursue whatever I wanted. But, quite honestly, that never entered into my calculus for what to do. Because some of it was, I knew the physicians, I knew how they practiced. I have heard them deliberate over cases and things of that nature. I mean, I have full confidence in our team here. No, there was never any question about that.
That's good to hear. And you also said this to the Pulse Inquiry too in 2011, quote, "I think it's important to consistently live what you believe." Who and what are you believing these days?
Yeah, good. So I am a person of faith, and so we believe in Christian faith, that is, and so hold those beliefs closely and try to live a life in accordance with Christian faith and and doctrine. And I think that hopefully, I don't always do it perfectly, but hopefully that permeates much of what I do as it relates to how I do my job here. I mean, again, I think the hospital work. I mean, we're here as a community not-for-profit system to provide good care for the people in this community. To provide, our mission statement is healing all people with compassion, faith, and excellence. Okay, and so my job, is to help us execute that mission in the areas that I touch as closely and as thoroughly as possible, and I need to labor to that end. I believe one of the ways that I evidence my Christian faith is by laboring to that end, right? It wouldn't be any different if I were in any other field. We labor to those ends because those ends are good for society and lead to human flourishing and things of that nature. I'm also interested, I don't know if you picked up on this, but I'm also interested, I for a number of years have done some international related work.
Yes.
And I do that. Do you want me to let you ask, or you want me to take?
Go for it.
So I do. I've been for the last several years. I've been involved with a company called Global Leadership International. I've also been involved with Water Missions International, but it focused my efforts a bit on Global Leadership International, and the focus is, so it happens to be in Central Asia, and more specifically in Afghanistan.
Right.
So, the focus is, as the West begins to limit its presence in Afghanistan, for the last decade and a half, there's been a strong focus on aid and things of that nature provided by Western NGOs or non-governmental organizations. Well, as the West pulls out, that leaves a vacuum. And so the Afghan government is interested in having educated Afghans trained to step into that vacuum and to step into and assume some of those leadership roles for the Afghan society. And so kind of recognizing that need, I was working with a gentleman that I knew through some other connections, and kind of got interested in that. Had a chance. I had done some international work before, some international business teaching before, so I already had a little bit of a flavor for that. But the opportunity presented to do that in a kind of a more direct and focused way. And so Global Leadership International provides it's a 24-week program for the students, but it lasts over the course of most of the years, like an academic, academic year. So, roughly mid-March to roughly mid-November, and then they graduate typically the first Friday in December, with some breaks in there. And it's 200 direct teaching contact hours. And when I go over and teach, which is about 2 times a year, I teach for 4 nights in a row. So it's 5 to 7. It's usually a cohort of 12 to 15 students, and these are educated, so they've all been through baccalaureate training. Some are physicians, some are lawyers. We teach principles of leadership. Now, this is being done cross-culturally, and I'm not telling them how to lead in Afghanistan because it's a different culture and they need to figure that out. What I'm doing is teaching them leadership practices and principles that they can take and apply. And extremely rewarding. These are mostly young people, and have a heart for their country, have a optimistic outlook on their country. It can be a dark place because of some of what goes on. It's a poor country, but the people are extremely bright, extremely happy to see us there, and it's one of the most fulfilling things that I do. I really enjoy it.
That's so good to hear. Describe to me the following one word: Wingate University.
Wingate University, in one word, developmental or growth, something along those lines. I was really able to grow, I think, as a student while at Wingate. My major was in chemistry and biology, and I was involved in a number of extracurricular things on campus, and it was really a developmental time in my life to grow academically, and to become a more well-rounded person, things of that nature. So something like growth or development.
Yeah. Your wife, Micah.
Yes, Micah. So we met in high school. She was 2 years behind me. We met in a history or geography class or something along those lines. I don't remember which, but maybe I was a little distracted at that time. But no, we continued dating while I went on to graduate as a senior. Continued dating while she finished up. She went on to nursing school. I went on to graduate school at Chapel Hill. She did nursing school in Charlotte, and then I did a 1-year fellowship at Carolina's Healthcare System in Charlotte. And after that, we moved down to Charleston in 2003. And so she did labor and delivery nursing both here at Roper and at St. Francis for a number of years. And I really enjoyed that. I think she regrets to some degree not still being able to utilize those skills. She just utilizes those skills in a different way now with our kids at home. Yes, yes.
Speaking of which, describe your children in one word.
Children in one word: blessing.
Yes. East Cooper Baptist Church.
East Cooper Baptist Church. We go to church there. You want in one word, or you want
go
more?
for that. Yeah, you can go for it.
Okay. So, pardon me, I'm sweating now. East Cooper Baptist Church is it's about a 2,000 member church in Mount Pleasant. We started attending there in 2005, late 2005. Have really been blessed there. Lots of things for our kids to get involved in. East Cooper has a very global outreach focus, which resonates with a lot of my passions. Good teaching. So I've had the privilege of serving as a deacon there and serving as an elder there. So it's been really good for our family. We've grown there a lot.
Yeah. You talk about a Bible-based church. That's one of them.
I think so. Absolutely.
Yeah. One word to describe Scott Broome.
One word to describe Scott Broome. I'm probably not the smartest guy in the room, but I don't think I'm the dumbest either. So I wouldn't use anything about smarts or intellect, but disciplined. I hope that in the various things that I'm involved in, that I take my abilities and use those abilities to further the things that I'm involved in to the fullest extent possible.
Scott Broome, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.